Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the 5-Minute Leader. Today I'm going to be talking about if you can have too much psychological safety at work. And you may have come across this article, I have it pulled up in front of me here. It's called The Downside of Psychological Safety in the Workplace. It was actually published a couple of months ago, but I feel like it really went under the radar and a lot of people didn't end up grasping the concept of this. And it's really related, I think, a lot to the concept of leading with vulnerability. So the idea of psychological safety, of course, developed by Amy Edmondson, who's fantastic. She endorsed my book on leading with vulnerability. She's one of the people that I've interviewed for the book, is basically this idea where you can feel safe to come forward, to speak up, to share mistakes, challenges, and not be ridiculed or harassed or demeaned or put down in any kind of way. So you want to create an environment where obviously employees feel safe to talk about things. And this article is really interesting because and you can go through the article yourself. If you go to Knowledge at Wharton, that's who published it. It was Peter Capelli. They looked at hundreds of different performance reviews and studies and came to the conclusion that you can actually have too much psychological safety. And basically what that means and the way that they describe it is too much psychological safety is the idea that nobody can have that there are no such thing as bad ideas in your company. There are no such thing as bad questions, that performance doesn't matter, that you can basically say or do anything that you want and act in any kind of a way, and that there should be no repercussions for it. And that's what the idea of having too much psychological safety, according to this paper, is all about. And I just wanted to read a couple quotes here. So one quote from Peter Capelli, he says, I think it's gone overboard now. People are always talking about the benefits, but they are never thinking about possible negative consequences. And another couple quotes that I wanted to read here. Can you imagine getting a bad and deserved performance appraisal from your boss and feeling psychologically safe after it? Of course, probably might not feel super psychologically safe after getting a bad review. One other quote here that I wanted to pull out is here. This is a case where good enough is truly the goal. So managers and supervisors need to create enough psychological safety, but we don't also want to be going overboard with it. And I think this is very, very relevant. Oh, here's the other quote. He says, there appear to be two reasons why very high levels of psychological safety hurt job performance. One is that the no bad ideas stereotype may simply mean that very high levels of psychological safety come when we perceive there will be no consequences or no serious ones for poor performance. And that's where that quote of, can you imagine getting a bad and deserved performance appraisal from your boss and feeling psychologically safe after it comes from. And he said a second reason is that it may focus our attention on the few creative tasks we have and away from the more important routine tasks. So again, the concept here is that you want to have some level of psychological safety, but you want to be careful of creating an environment where there is so much psychological safety where we're scared and uncomfortable to talk about bad and difficult things, where performance gets pushed by the wayside, where we say that every idea is a great idea. That's too much. That's not the reality of the workplace. It's not the reality of the world either. This ties very much into this concept of leading with vulnerability, because one of the things that I have observed after interviewing 100 CEOs for my book and surveying these 14,000 employees with leadership from DDI is that over the past few years, we've been using vulnerability as a way to justify and kind of hide poor performance. And we forget that while vulnerability is important for connecting with our employees, at the end of the day, there's still a certain level of competence, which is also very, very important and crucial in the workplace. So you want to have just enough of that psychological safety, but you don't want it to go overboard. We still have to remember that we have jobs to do. Performance is still important. Goals need to be achieved. Metrics need to be reached. Customers need to be served. Problems need to be solved. And so I thought this was a very interesting article. I'll link to it as well in this video so you can go ahead and take a look at it. But for this week, it's something that I wanted you to think about is, can you have too much psychological safety at your company? Are you creating too much psychological safety, which I think can also lead to different types of entitlement inside the organization? So take a look at your team. take a look at your organization and ask yourself, do we have too much psychological safety? Do we not have enough psychological safety? And how do we get to the point, as Peter Capelli describes, where we just have enough? Good is good enough. Something to think about for this week and how it relates to this idea of leading with vulnerability. Hope you're having a wonderful day wherever in the world you are.